are used to. If you get it out on cold days, you might find that it's pretty stiff and it doesn't want to like lay out flat. If you kind of mess with it with your knife for a little bit, you'll get some, it'll kind of warm up for you. Most of you that aren't doing super detailed images, you're going to use something called process black. That's a great color to use. Mine, because I have so much tight detail, so if you have one that has a lot of texture or tiny detail, you want to use a stiffer ink, right? So that the ink stays put on top of your lines and it doesn't ooze down into your white lines, okay? Now, for most of you, because you're not going to be cutting images this insane, you could really use any type of black or any type of color you want. You could like use dark red, so you could get dark red, mix it with a little bit of black. You could do dark green, dark blue, brown, any of those are fine. I don't recommend that people use yellow or like a weird light color. Don't do that because it's just very, very difficult to see the line work. So you're always better off using a darker color. But it doesn't necessarily have to be black. So if you have an idea, if you're saying, man, I want to mix a blood red and I don't know how to do that, I can help you do that. Okay. Rolling the ink out is basically the same as for monotype. You want your ink slab to look like velvet. Now this ink is way stiffer than what you guys are used to. And it takes several rolling to get, a little bit of rolling to get it to. See how it's like tar? So when it does this, you can just actually kind of spread it out a little bit. Usually once you've been rolling a little bit, it warms it up and it starts spreading out. Actually, what we're going to do, I'm going to mix this with a little bit of the regular process black. So it just says standard process black on it. So we're going to mix the two together. Maybe. Can you see if you can find me one that I can open? It doesn't have much in it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But you usually do not have to add oil. If you have ink like this and you cannot get it to roll out, you can either mix it with a looser color, or you can add a touch of oil to this to loosen it up, but you don't have to make it as loose as we did with the monotype ink. If I were printing on my own, I would just keep messing with this until it cooperated with me. Thank you. So I'm just going to get a little bit of this black and mix it. See how much looser that is? And again, we keep the top as flat as possible. Does everybody see that? I'm kind of scraping ink off the top. So by mixing these two colors together, I'm going to end up with something that's kind of in between the two. So it's stiff, but it lays out a little bit better for me. Ooh, that was close. Sorry about that. That would have been unfortunate. You would have been wearing that. You can also test your colors with tap outs the same way we would do with monotype. Remember we got the piece of paper and we kind of dragged our color across? You can do that too to see what it's really going to look like, because it's going to look a lot different when it's all on your ink slab piled up. It looks very different rolled out. So if you're unsure, don't hesitate to test the color. This should lay out a little bit better for us. There we go. See that? I try to get away with using as little ink as I can possibly do, but see how ink is getting on the sides? That's where the tape is going to come in handy, because we can just put a little bit of solvent on a rag and wipe it off. Now the first few times you print these, I always recommend that people do this on newsprint. And the reason why is that newsprint mimics the texture and weight of the paper we're going to be printing on. So once you get some really good ones on newsprint, you know that you'll be able to get good ones on your good paper, but then you're not wasting your good paper. Does that make sense? So we'll test it with this first. We'll go ahead and see what this looks like. You see how I'm rolling in lots of different directions? That's to spread the ink out. So now before I print, I want to get a little bit of alcohol, get a dirty rag. Always use these first. Okay, so always use the dirty rags first. So then you just wipe it off. Also, I'll show you guys another trick. Say if I wanted some of this to print a little lighter, you can actually tap it with your rag like you would a monotype and knock that ink down a little bit so it's a little bit lighter than what's elsewhere. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of modify it as you're going. So we'll see what that looks like. So if I wrap this in my finger and say if I want this to be a little bit lighter, I'm just kind of tap.
And that is the alcohol on it?
No, I'm trying to use a part that doesn't. If you use the alcohol, you're just going to take it probably a little more off than what you intended. So, but I've done this before and it does work. Especially with blacks, if you want it a lot lighter, I recommend that you experiment with how much you really need to do that to get the look you're looking for. Most people, to be honest with you, don't do that. They just print it black and are done, okay? But I like to see what kind of variation I can get, because sometimes it can really make or break your print. So, but I'm probably more meticulous than anybody in this room. Fair to say? Okay. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna put this on newsprint.